Eventually, I might just make a playlist of all of these I've done it before reviews. To be more specific, an I've done it before review is what you're about to get, where I review a game on a new platform that I previously covered on a previous platform. Team Meat's famous hard as nails platformer I covered on the PlayStation Vita and PlayStation TV, and with the new version out now, I'm ready to cover it on the Nintendo Switch. So, without further ado, here is my review of the Switch version of Super Meat Boy. The story of Super Meat Boy is pretty simple. Bandage Girl, whom is Meat Boy's girlfriend, gets kidnapped by Dr. Fetus, a literal fetus in a robotic costume, and Meat Boy goes after them to rescue his girlfriend. Now that's a pretty simple premise, but a lot of people love the lore and the story behind the Meat Boy series, and that's because of how dark, gritty, and gory it is. This is a cartoony 2D platformer, but it is on the level of a horror film, with you seeing people exploding into puddles of blood, animals getting beheaded, and all kinds of just dark and shocking scenes every time you start and finish each of the worlds. It's just something that a lot of cartoony platformers just don't do. Super Meat Boy by Gameplay is a 2D platformer, often called a tough as nails 2D platformer because of how difficult it is. But before diving into the meat of the game, let's talk about what you get in this version that is different from previous versions. As handheld gamers are well aware, the Vita version of Super Meat Boy is compatible with the PlayStation TV, enabling you to play the game on a console and a handheld at the same time. When you buy it on the Switch, you get an exclusive game mode known as Race Mode. This mode allows you to use local multiplayer to race your friend for better times going through challenges and stages. Now currently this is exclusive to the Nintendo Switch version, but we've gotten hints that it may be headed to other platforms eventually. The main progress of the game is very similar to older styled Mario games. You've got several worlds to go through, and each world is comprised of stages ending with a boss fight. Now, when you actually go into the stages, a more physics heavy element is thrown into the mix. All the stages are bite sized aside from the boss fights, and your task is basically to avoid constant traps and hazards and get to the ending point of the stage where you can find Bandage Girl and go to the next stage. This is where the real shine of Super Meat Boy comes into play. All of these stages can probably be conquered in 5 to 10 seconds, especially towards the beginning of the game. Later on in the game, maybe 20 or 30 seconds. But you're going to be spending a lot more time on them than that. These stages are set up so that you have constant hazards to worry about, and you don't have health points. If you fall off a ledge, if you get hit by a single hazard, you instantly die and restart from the very beginning of the stage. So it's all about using physics to your advantage, learning how Meat Boy moves around, and finding clear paths to get around the hazards and get to the end of the stage. What would normally be a 5 to 10 second stage towards the end of the game will turn into a 10, 20, 30, maybe even hour long attempt at trying to get through the stage itself. Now, most of the regular stages aren't that tough to figure out, which that leads to not a whole huge mess of frustration. Okay, if you die after 5 or 6 seconds of going through the stage, okay, I have to repeat 5 whole seconds. But when you get to the boss fights, it gets significantly more frustrating, to a point where the difficulty is a little too much. This is mostly in the actual final boss, as that presents a situation where you're not going to be playing for 5 or 10 seconds and lose. You might be playing for 30, 40, 50, 60 seconds and lose. And with so many intricate hazards that only have a very specific physics-based way to get around, it becomes frustrating. Not when you die, but when you've died for the 50th time, you have to take a break to not want to throw your Switch against the wall. In that aspect, the difficulty becomes a little too much. But that does help with the amount of content you're getting in the game. Let's talk about length. The main game has about 105 stages, and as I said, you could clear some stages in 10 seconds, some stages in a minute or less. So we're talking about 40 to 60 minutes if you never die, you never screw up through all 105 stages. But let's be honest, you will. Many of the World 1 or 2 stages you'll clear your first try, but Even veterans of the game like myself will have dozens upon dozens upon dozens of deaths behind them, turning that 40 to 60 minutes into several hours. There's not really anything I can say about graphics and presentation. It looks really smooth and really optimized both in terms of performance and visuals, so we're going to skip straight to the next section, and that is battery life. For a 2D game, you're going to get plenty of time and plenty of frustration out of this game. Here are my times from 100% to 0%. Maximum brightness of the Wi-Fi on, 4 hours and 13 minutes. Maximum brightness of the Wi-Fi off, 4 hours and 28 minutes. Lower brightness of the Wi-Fi on, 5 hours and 46 minutes. Lower brightness of the Wi-Fi off, 5 hours and 58 minutes. So you're going to get tons of battery life out of this game and many, many chances to be frustrated on the go. Now, in conclusion, Super Meat Boy remains one of the most entertaining and intentionally frustrating platformers around, with its unique art style and its very dark and mature themes. Now, the bosses do tend to be overkill on the frustration side. If you love platformers and don't mind the challenge, Super Meat Boy has a ton of content, whether you like to play on the go or at home. Reviews to Go rates Super Meat Boy for the Nintendo Switch a 9 out of 10. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, or head to the website at www.reviewstogo.com.